The 3,500-year truce is over. Aliens declare war, but humans only chuckled. Part 1 in the quiet hum of a mid-morning on Earth. The sky did not crack open, no fire rained from above, and no great booming voice shook the cities. Instead, the declaration of war came through a simple alert on every screen, every compad, every public display from the lunar colonies to the orbital farms circling Mars. It blinked once in calm blue letters, then played a short message from Ambassador Kale of the Zinthari, his silver-scaled face stern, his voice low and heavy with what he clearly believed was righteous anger. "The truce of 3,500 years is broken," he said, eyes fixed on the lens as if staring straight into the soul of humanity. "By your hand on the moon of Xylos, you have awakened what should have slept forever. For this crime against the galactic order, the Council of Species declares war upon humankind. Surrender your fleets, dismantle your warp drives, and submit to judgment, or face total annihilation." The message ended. Silence followed for exactly 3 seconds, then, across the solar system, humans laughed. In New Chicago, Danny Morales sat on his hover bench outside a noodle stall, scrolling through music feeds when the alert popped up. He watched the whole thing with a mouthful of synth noodles, blinked and snorted so hard he nearly choked. 3,500 years. He wheezed, wiping his eyes. "Man, I didn't even know we had a truce. Did we sign something while I was asleep?" His friend Jen, leaning against a solar-charged scooter, just shook her head and grinned. "Maybe it's like that library fine I forgot about. They're finally sending the repo drones." On the moon, inside Dome 7, Lisa Carter was elbow-deep in a faulty oxygen recycler when her wrist comm buzzed. She pulled it up with one grease-streaked hand, watched the message, and let out a dry chuckle that echoed in the metal chamber. "Oh, come on," she muttered, tapping the screen off.
"They think we've been sitting here for millennia waiting to break some cosmic pinky promise?"
She turned back to her work, shaking her head. "I've got real problems. This recycler's acting up again." Even in the high-security briefing rooms of United Earth Defense Command, the reaction was restrained, but not fearful. General Hector Ruiz, a man who'd seen 3 border skirmishes and 2 near misses with rogue AI fleets, simply leaned back in his chair and said, "Well, that's new." His aide, a young officer named Ray, looked nervous. "Sir, should we go to red alert? Mobilize the outer patrols?" Hector waved a hand. "Not yet. Let's see if they actually show up." Half the time, these old councils bluster like grandpas at a card game. Meanwhile, on Mars, in a dusty university archive buried beneath red rock, Dr. Eli Parker paused his work on ancient alien trade routes. He replayed the Zinthari message twice, then frowned. Something felt off. 3,500 years? Humanity had only cracked faster than light travel 4 centuries ago. Before that, they'd been stuck in their own solar system, squabbling over oil, water, and ideology like toddlers with too many toys. How could they have been part of a truce that old? Eli pulled up the Galactic Historical Database, public access version, and typed in Great Truce and 3,500 years. The results were vague, poetic even. References to the silence after the burning, the pact of still stars, and the long sleep. No dates, no signatories, no mention of Earth or Sol system. It was all myth wrapped in ceremony, like old Earth legends of Atlantis or the Tower of Babel. Back on Earth, the news networks exploded, not with panic, but with jokes. Late-night holoshow hosts did skits about alien parking tickets and overdue galactic library books. Meme artists flooded the nets with images of humans shrugging, while planets exploded behind them. One popular post showed a cartoon human offering a Zinthari warrior a cup of coffee with the caption, "Sorry we broke your 3,500-year nap. Want a donut?" The Zinthari, watching from their command spire in the Orion Rim, were baffled. Their war drums had echoed across 100 systems. Their dreadnoughts powered up. Their allies pledged ships and soldiers. They expected fear, pleas, maybe desperate negotiations. Not this. Not laughter. Not memes. Not a teenager in New Chicago live-streaming himself building a truce breaker sandwich with extra pickles. Just to spite them. Ambassador Kale called an emergency session with the council elders. "They mock us," he hissed, tail lashing. "They do not understand the gravity of their crime." An elder from the virile species, ancient and moss-covered, spoke slowly. "Or perhaps they understand it too well. Remember, the humans are young. They do not carry the old fears in their bones." But Kale would not be swayed. Orders went out. Fleets began to move. The first wave, 50 warships from 6 species, began the long jump toward the Sol system. They would arrive in 3 days. Enough time, they thought, for humanity to come to their senses. On Earth, no one panicked. Schools stayed open. Factories kept humming. Farmers on Titan's greenbelts harvested their crops. In a small apartment in Seattle, a girl named Maya asked her mom, "Are the aliens really coming to fight us?" Her mom, stirring soup, smiled. "If they are, they picked the wrong species to mess with, sweetie." At United Earth Defense, Hector finally gave an order. Not to arm weapons or raise shields, but to prepare a message. "Tell them we'll meet them at neutral zone Theta in 3 days," he said. "And add this, bring snacks. Ours are running low." The message was sent. Simple, calm, utterly human. And somewhere, deep in the void between stars, the first alien warships blinked in confusion. Because no one laughs when war is declared except humans. The 3,500-year truce is over. Aliens declare war, but humans only chuckled. Part 2. As alien warships gathered at the edge of human space, the people of Earth did not hide. They did not scream. They did not even stop their daily routines. Instead, they asked questions, real ones, the kind that dig deep and refuse to let go. In universities, labs, and dusty digital archives, historians and scientists began to wonder, what truce? Dr. Eli Parker on Mars was already knee-deep in old data. He had spent the night pulling up every record he could find about the so-called Great Truce. Most of it came from council-approved sources, poetic, vague, full of grand words but empty of facts. He found no treaty text, no list of species that signed it. No date, no location, no witnesses. It was like trying to prove a dream happened. He called Lisa Carter on the moon. "You seeing this?" he asked, his voice crackling through the comm. "Yeah," she said, wiping grease off her cheek with the back of her hand. "I ran a search too. Nothing solid. It's all myth wrapped in bureaucracy." "Exactly," Eli said. "And here's the thing. Humanity didn't even have starships 3,500 years ago. We were still figuring out how to grow wheat without killing each other over it." That fact spread fast. Within hours, independent researchers across the system joined the hunt. A teenager in New Delhi cross-referenced ancient Earth calendars with Galactic Standard Time and proved that 3,500 years ago, humans were in their Iron Age, not their Space Age. A retired linguist in Buenos Aires pointed out that none of the oldest human languages had words for Galactic Council or Zenthari. Meanwhile, the alien fleets grew closer. Their comms channels buzzed with impatience. Why weren't humans begging? Why weren't they scrambling to build defenses? The answer, of course, was that humans were doing both, but quietly and with coffee. On Earth, United Earth Defense Command activated silent protocols, not for war, but for truth. They released declassified data from early deep space probes, scans of ancient ruins on dead worlds, fragments of alien scripts found drifting in asteroid belts, and logs from the first human scouts who'd ventured beyond Pluto. None of it mentioned a truce. Then came the breakthrough. In a forgotten server deep in the Europa data vault, a junior archivist named Nate found something strange. It was a partial transmission, dated 3,482 years ago, recorded by a long-dead Varel scout ship. The audio was broken, but one line repeated clearly. "The silence must hold. The young ones must not wake." Eli listened to it 3 times. His blood ran cold. "They weren't making peace," he whispered. "They were locking something away." He called Hector Ruiz. The general listened in silence, then said, "So the truce wasn't with us. It was around us, exactly. The council hadn't made a peace treaty with humanity. They'd placed a quarantine on the Sol system. They'd sealed it off, labeled it forbidden, and told everyone to forget it existed. And for thousands of years they succeeded, until humans built their own ships, flew past the old borders and landed on Xylos, the very moon the council had marked as off-limits. But why? Eli dug deeper. He found references to a great burning that swept the galaxy long ago. Entire civilizations vanished overnight. Stars went dark. Survivors spoke of a force that fed on chaos, war, and fear. The council's ancestors, desperate to stop it, created safe zones, quiet places where no war could start, no signal could scream. Sol System was one of them. And now, humans had terraformed Xylos, drilled into its crust and activated ancient machinery buried beneath the ice. Not out of malice. Just curiosity. Just the human need to build, to fix, to make life where there was none. To the council, it looked like a violation. To humans, it was just another Tuesday. As this truth spread, public opinion shifted. The laughter didn't stop, but it changed. It wasn't mocking anymore. It was sad, disappointed, even a little angry. So they lied, Lisa said over comms, her voice tight. They kept us in the dark for centuries, then blamed us for stepping into the light. On Earth, people gathered in plazas, not to protest but to talk. Parents explained to children that sometimes the rules aren't fair. Engineers debated whether the old quarantine was even necessary anymore. Philosophers asked if peace built on silence was peace at all. The council, sensing the shift, sent a new message. This one was sharper, colder. Your delay is defiance. Your research is sabotage. Stand down or be erased. But humans didn't stand down. Instead, Captain Marcus Bell of the cruiser Odyssey sent a reply. Not a threat. Not a plea. Just a simple data packet. Inside were scans of xylos, showing stable geology, clean energy readings, and no signs of whatever awakening the council feared. Along with it, he added a note. We found nothing but ice and rock. But we did find your old warning buoys. Rusted shut. Maybe check your own systems before blaming us. The message stunned the council. Their own records confirmed the buoys had failed centuries ago. The quarantine line had been invisible for generations. Doubt crept in. Among the younger species, the ones who'd never seen war, who'd only heard stories, the council's authority began to crack. The Qatari, a bird-like people known for their love of music, asked why they should fight a species that shared its science freely. The Gorm, massive and gentle, questioned why fear should rule the galaxy. Back on Earth, Danny Morales posted a new video. This time he wasn't joking. He stood in front of a star map, pointing to Sol. We didn't break your truce, he said, voice steady. Because we were never part of it. You forgot about us. Now you're mad we remembered ourselves. The video went viral. Not just on human nets, but on neutral alien channels too. 3 days before the fleets were set to arrive. The council held an emergency vote. Half wanted to press on. The other half demanded answers. Ambassador Kale raged, but even his allies looked unsure. Meanwhile on Mars, Eli made one last discovery. Buried in a corrupted file from a pre-warp Earth satellite, launched over 2,000 years ago, was a faint signal. Not alien. Human. A child's voice recorded for a time capsule saying, "Hello, future. We hope you're kind." He played it for Lisa. She didn't laugh this time. She just nodded, because that was the heart of it. Humans weren't warriors by nature. They were builders, healers, dreamers. Yes, they fought when they had to. Yes, they made mistakes. But they always reached out a hand after the storm. And now the storm was coming, but this time, humans weren't alone in wondering if the old ways were wrong. Somewhere in the void, a Qatari ship powered down its weapons. On Earth, a baker in Cairo made extra bread, just in case visitors showed up hungry. And in Lunar Dome 7, Lisa finished fixing the oxygen recycler, then sat back and stared at the stars. Let them come, she said softly. We've got coffee. The 3,500-year truce is over. Aliens declare war, but humans only chuckled. Part 3, the day of the meeting arrived with no fanfare. No trumpets, no war chants, no dramatic music swelling in the void. Just silent stars and a single human ship drifting alone in neutral zone Theta. The cruiser Odyssey wasn't big. It wasn't shiny. It had patches on its hull from past repairs and a faded logo near the engine that read, Sol Fleet, keep calm and carry oxygen. Captain Marcus Bell stood on the bridge, sipping real coffee from a chipped mug. His crew moved calmly, checking systems, running diagnostics, chatting about dinner plans. They knew 50 alien warships were closing in. They also knew panic never fixed a broken engine or a broken galaxy. When the first Zenthari dreadnought dropped out of warp, it loomed like a mountain of black metal, bristling with weapons. Others followed, Qatari swifts with feathered hulls, Gorm heavies shaped like slow-moving asteroids, and sleek virile scouts humming with ancient tech. Together, they formed a ring around the Odyssey, a wall of fire waiting for a command. Ambassador Kale's voice boomed across open comms. Human vessel. Power down your engines. Prepare to be boarded. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He just keyed the mic and said, Morning, Ambassador. You brought snacks like we asked? Silence, then a confused pause. This is not a social call, human. Sure it is, Marcus replied. We're here to talk. But I skipped breakfast, so if you've got anything crunchy, I'd appreciate it. From the bridge of the dreadnought, Kale stared at his officers. None of them knew how to respond. War was supposed to begin with threats, not snack requests. Then, without warning, Kale gave the order, fire a warning shot. Low yield, aim for their bow. A plasma cannon glowed red on the dreadnought's flank. Energy built. Space rippled, and with a flash, a bolt of superheated plasma screamed toward the Odyssey. It struck the ship's nose and vanished. Not exploded. Not deflected. Just gone, like a raindrop hitting dry sand. On every alien bridge, alarms stayed silent. Sensors showed nothing. The shot had simply ceased to exist. Marcus took another sip of coffee. Nice try, but our shields eat plasma for breakfast. He tapped a button. Instantly, hundreds of tiny drones, no bigger than birds, spilled from the Odyssey's bay. They didn't attack. They hovered, blinking soft blue lights, and began broadcasting. Not weapons data, not battle plans. History. On every alien screen, footage played. Black and white clips of Earth in the 1940s. Cities in ruins, people digging through rubble yet sharing bread. Grainy videos of the 21st century. Doctors working through plagues. Volunteers rebuilding after floods. Kids planting trees in scorched fields. Then clearer recordings from the 23rd century. Humans landing on Mars with nothing but hope and duct tape, laughing as their first habitat module nearly blew away in a dust storm. One clip showed a woman in a radiation suit singing to a baby in a bunker during the Jupiter station meltdown. Another showed engineers dancing in zero-G after fixing a broken warp core with spare parts and chewing gum. The message wasn't spoken. It was felt. Humans didn't fear war because they'd lived through worse. Not with aliens. With themselves. With nature, with time. And every time they'd risen, not with rage but with stubborn kindness and a weird sense of humor. On the Gorm command ship, the massive captain lowered his head. They do not break, he rumbled to his second. They bend, and keep growing. On a Qatari Swift, a young pilot whispered, they laugh, because they've already survived. Only Kale remained unmoved. Tricks, he snarled. Illusions to hide your guilt. But doubt had taken root. Then Lisa Carter's voice cut through the comms. She'd patched in from Lunar Dome 7. Ambassador, you keep saying we broke the truce. But here's what you missed. She sent a data burst. Xylos isn't dangerous. It's a library. The awakening you feared? It's just an old message. From a species that died out before your ancestors could count stars. The data unfolded. Scans showed the moon's core wasn't unstable. It was stable beyond belief. The drilling had uncovered a vault, not a weapon. Inside were records, star maps, and a warning. Beware the silence. It breeds fear. Eli Parker added his voice from Mars. Your truce wasn't peace. It was fear dressed as order. And you blamed us for stepping out of the dark you forced us into. Kale's hands clenched. His ship's weapons powered up again. Enough talk. If you will not surrender, you will be removed. Go ahead, Marcus said calmly. But know this, every human ship, every station, every colony has the same shields. Your weapons won't touch us, and if you fire in earnest, you won't be fighting just us. You'll be fighting truth. As if on cue, signals lit up across the alien fleet. The Qatari ships powered down their cannons. The Gorm vessels shifted formation, creating a gap. Even some viral scouts dimmed their battle lights. We will not fire on them, the Gorm captain announced over open channel. They speak without lies, Kyle turned furious. You betray the council? No, said the Qatari commander, her voice melodic but firm. We honor it, by asking if it still deserves honor. Marcus set his coffee down. Look, Ambassador, we didn't come here to fight. We came here to say the old rules don't fit anymore. Maybe they never did. Let's make new ones, together. Silence stretched. Stars blinked. Engines hummed low. Then from the back of the fleet, a small transport ship broke formation. It flew toward the Odyssey, lights flashing green, the universal sign of peace. It was a Xylosian vessel, a species thought extinct. Their leader, frail but bright-eyed, spoke through a translator. We hid for centuries. We watched. You humans, you did what we could not. You faced the silence and called it by its name. Kale stared, his certainty cracked. On Earth, Danny Morales watched the live feed in a crowded plaza. When the Xylosian ship appeared, the crowd didn't cheer. They just nodded as if they'd expected it all along, because humans knew something the council had forgotten. War ends when someone chooses to listen. And sometimes, all it takes is a cup of coffee, a drone full of old memories, and the courage to laugh in the face of fear. Marcus opened a channel to all ships. So about those snacks. And for the first time in 3,500 years, the galaxy began to truly see humanity, not as a threat, but as a mirror. The 3,500-year truce is over. Aliens declare war, but humans only chuckled. Part 4. After the standoff at Neutral Zone Theta, the alien armada did not vanish. It lingered, engines idling, weapons cold, minds turning over what they had seen and heard. The humans had not fired a single shot. They had not shouted or threatened. They had simply shown who they were, and in doing so had cracked open a truth the galaxy had buried for millennia. Ambassador Kale returned to his command spire in silence. His pride stung, but deeper than that was confusion. He had been taught since birth that the truce was sacred, that the soul system was a wound best left undisturbed. Yet the humans spoke of Xylos not as a curse but as a gift. And the Zylosians, long believed lost to time, had stepped forward alive and calm, confirming every human word. On Earth, the mood was quiet but steady. People went about their days but with a new awareness. They were no longer just citizens of a planet or a system. They were part of something larger, whether they liked it or not. In schools, teachers spoke of responsibility, not just technology. In labs, scientists shared data freely with alien researchers who now asked questions instead of demands. But the real work began in the archives. Eli Parker, now working with a joint human-Xylosian team on Mars, dug deeper into the vault beneath Xylos. It wasn't just a library. It was a tomb of knowledge left behind by a race called the Eltheri, beings who had lived long before the Council's ancestors crawled from their oceans. The Eltheri had seen the galaxy tear itself apart in endless cycles of war. They had tried to stop it not with weapons, but with truth. They built vaults like the one on Xylos, scattered across dead worlds, each containing records of past collapses and warnings about the danger of silence. They didn't fear invasion, Eli explained during a live briefing with United Earth Defense and curious alien observers. They feared forgetting. When species stop talking, when they hide behind old rules and never question them, that's when fear grows, and fear leads to war. Lisa Carter, now aboard a science shuttle orbiting Xylos, ran scans of the moon's core. She confirmed the rift beneath the surface wasn't a weapon or a monster. It was a stabilized dimensional node, left by the Eltheri as a communication relay. It hadn't been awakened by human drilling. It had been waiting, patiently, for someone to listen. The council elders, watching from their ancient halls, grew uneasy. The story they had told for generations, the story of the Great Burning, the truce, the need for silence, was unraveling. And with it, their authority. Then came the final proof. A virile historian, one of the few who had doubted the official tale, uncovered a sealed chamber in their oldest temple. Inside was a stone tablet written in pre-council script. It told of the real reason for the quarantine, not because Sol was dangerous, but because it was different. Humans had no hive mind, no rigid caste, no single ruler. They argued, changed their minds, rebuilt after ruin, and laughed in the face of despair. To the old council, that chaos was terrifying. So they locked Sol away, hoping it would fade into myth. We feared what we did not understand, the virile elder admitted on open comms, voice trembling. And in fearing it, we made it our enemy. The admission spread like wind through dry grass. Species that had followed the council out of tradition now questioned everything. The Qatari opened their music archives to human composers. The Gorm offered to help rebuild old human outposts damaged in past skirmishes. Even the Zenthari fleet, still loyal to Kale, began to fracture as younger officers asked why they should fight a species that offered coffee instead of cannons. Back on Earth, General Hector Ruiz met with Captain Marcus Bell and a small group of alien delegates aboard a neutral station near Titan. No guards, no weapons. Just a round table and a pot of coffee. Real beans brewed strong. So what now? Hector asked. The Xylosian delegate, a gentle being named Orin, spoke first. The rift on Xylos can be activated fully. It will link to other Eltheri nodes across the galaxy. Not for war. For sharing. For memory, Marcus nodded. We've already tested a low signal. It works. Clean, fast, no interference, Proy. But the council will resist, said a young Qatari scientist. They've built their power on the old ways. Then we don't ask them to lead, Hector said simply. We just start building, and let others join when they're ready. That became the plan. Not a treaty, not a surrender, not even a new alliance yet. just a project. The first joint human-alien science mission would travel to Xylos, activate the rift, and begin downloading the Eltheri archives. Anyone could watch. Anyone could learn. As preparations began, Danny Morales and his friends in New Chicago started a new trend. They collected old Earth stories, tales of survival, kindness, and stubborn hope, and translated them into basic galactic code. They beamed them into space not as propaganda but as greeting cards. One read, "We messed up a lot, but we kept trying. Maybe you did too." On the moon, Lisa finished calibrating the shuttle's sensors. She looked out the viewport at Earth, blue and fragile. She thought of all the times humans had stood on the edge of ruin and stepped back not because they were strong but because they cared. Meanwhile, Ambassador Kale sat alone in his quarters. He replayed the footage from Neutral Zone Theta. He watched the human child singing in the bunker. He listened to the Xylosian elder speak of waiting in silence for centuries. And for the first time, he wondered if the Council had been the guardians of peace or the jailers of truth. He did not speak to his superiors. He did not issue orders. He simply turned off his comm and stared at the stars. On Mars, Eli received a message from an unknown sender. It was a single line written in ancient Eltheri script translated by his system. The first laugh breaks the longest silence. He smiled. Because that was it. That was the heart of everything. Humans hadn't laughed out of disrespect. They'd laughed because silence had lasted too long. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is chuckle in the dark, just to prove you're still alive. As the first joint mission launched toward Xylos, carrying humans, Qatari, Gorm, Varel, and even one quiet Xanthari observer, the galaxy held its breath, not for war, but for what came after. The 3,500-year truce is over. Aliens declare war, but humans only chuckled. Part 5. The joint mission arrived at Xylos under a sky of silent stars. No warships followed. No alarm sounded. Just a small fleet of science vessels from 6 species, drifting gently into orbit around the pale moon. Inside the lead ship, Captain Marcus Bell stood beside Orin the Xylosian, Lisa Carter, and a young Xanthari scientist named Tael, who had defied his elders to join the mission. They did not speak much. They did not need to. The weight of what they were about to do hung in the air like breath before a first step. Down on the surface, the human-built base hummed softly. Solar panels glowed in the weak light. Drones hovered near the drill site, now repurposed as a research station. The rift chamber lay beneath, sealed for thousands of years, waiting not for a weapon, but for a handshake. They descended together. Humans, Xylosian, Gorm, Qatari, Virel, and even Xanthari, walking side by side through tunnels carved by human machines and ancient Eltheri hands. At the center of the chamber stood a smooth stone pedestal, covered in symbols that shimmered when touched by light. Lisa placed her hand on it. Nothing happened. Then Orin stepped forward and sang, a low, clear note that echoed off the walls. The symbols flared to life. The floor trembled gently, and from the center of the room a soft blue light rose, forming a sphere of swirling data. The rift was open. Instantly, every ship in orbit received the signal, not as a blast but as a whisper. The Eltheri archives poured into their systems, maps of lost worlds, records of extinct species, blueprints for clean energy, medical cures, and philosophies about peace that had nothing to do with silence and everything to do with listening. On Earth, people watched the live feed in homes, schools, and public squares. In New Chicago, Danny Morales sat with his little sister, pointing at the screen. See that light? That's not a weapon. That's a library. On Mars, Eli Parker wept quietly as he read the first translated entry. To those who come after, do not fear your differences. Fear only the choice to stop learning from each other. Back at the Council's central spire, the elders remained silent. Some refused to watch. Others stared at the data streaming in, faces unreadable. Ambassador Kyle watched from his private chamber. He saw humans sharing the data freely, not hoarding it, not demanding payment. They even sent a copy directly to the Xanthari homeworld with a note. In case you missed it, he did not laugh. But something in his chest loosened. Days passed. The mission stayed on Xylos. Not as conquerors or saviors, but as students. The Gorm helped reinforce the chamber walls with their natural stone growth tech. The Qatari composed a song based on the Eltheri frequencies. Tael, the Xanthari scientist, worked side by side with Lisa, comparing energy readings and finding that their methods, though different, led to the same truth. Then came the summit. Not on a warship, not in a council hall, but on a neutral station near Titan, the same place where Hector Ruiz had once offered coffee. This time, more species came. Not just the old council members, but younger ones, species that had never spoken to humans before. They came not to judge, but to listen. Marcus stood before them, not in uniform, but in a simple gray jacket. He did not give a speech. He simply said, "We don't want to rule. We don't want to fight. We just want to be part of the conversation, and maybe share a cup of coffee while we figure things out." A Qatari delegate chirped softly. "Your coffee is bitter." "Yeah," Marcus grinned. "But it grows on you." Laughter rippled through the room, real, warm, unguarded. From there, the talks began. Not about surrender or punishment, but about cooperation. About building new channels of communication using the Eltheri Rift network. About opening old quarantines, not as threats, but as opportunities. About teaching, not commanding. The council did not dissolve that day, but it changed. The elders stepped back. Younger voices rose. And for the first time in millennia, decisions were made not by decree but by discussion. On Earth, life went on, but it felt different. Children drew pictures of alien friends in school. Engineers designed ships with shared control panels. Chefs experimented with Qatari spice blends and gourmet vegetables. The galaxy didn't become perfect overnight. Mistrust lingered. Old habits died hard, but the door was open, weeks later. A reporter from the Seoul Newsnet caught up with Captain Bell as he walked through a garden dome on the moon. She asked him the question everyone wanted to know. Why did humans laugh when war was declared? He stopped, looked out at the Earth hanging in the black sky and smiled. Because we've seen worse. We've lost cities, oceans, even hope. But we always came back. Not with anger, with stubborn kindness, and a little humor. You can't scare a species that's already survived its own worst days. He turned to her. And honestly, we knew they didn't really want war. They just forgot how to talk. The reporter nodded. She filed her story. And that night, across 100 worlds, beings read it and thought about their own silences. Back on Xylos, the rift pulsed gently, sending out its quiet signal. Not a call to arms. A call to learn. In New Chicago, Danny made a new meme. It showed a human and a Xanthari sharing a cup of coffee under a starry sky. The caption read, "Truce? We never signed one. But how about a friendship?" It went viral, even on Xanthari nets. And somewhere, in a quiet corner of the galaxy, an old council elder powered up a human coffee maker for the first time. He winced at the bitterness, then took another sip. Because sometimes peace doesn't start with a treaty. It starts with a chuckle, a question, and the courage to say, "Tell me more."